welcome back to the Seeds of Change podcast. I am Mark Turnipseed, your host, and I am super excited to be here today because we're trying a new system. We're trying a new platform over here. What we have is the Riverside app. It is a new podcasting platform for me. I guess it's been around a while, but I'm trying to figure out how to simplify this, how to make it easier, how to make it something that I can do more frequently, more consistently with you guys. You know, there's a lot of things in my life that I would like to do more of that are good for me, that are good for me, and that help other people, and that help that help. In particular, like let's think about for myself cold plunging. I really, really love cold plunging. It's very, very healthy for me. I notice the benefits every single time that I do it, as I do it consistently, right? I know that there's some short-term benefits, but the long-term benefits were much better for me. The increased sleep, the better functioning the better metabolizing functioning, just in general, the uplifted mood that started to come as living a life that was with lower inflammation. So, you know, that's primarily what it targets. But the thing is I have to be real consistent with it. So when I bought my cold plunge, I had it in my living room and I was very consistent with it. When I was thinking about where I was going to put it in my house, I knew that if I put it outside, I would be less consistent with it because it would be a little bit less convenient. For instance, like if it was raining, would I still go get into it? It was going to be less convenient. And therefore, it was going to be harder for me to be consistent with it. So things in my life I need to set up to be easy so that they can be consistent. That's where the word efficiency really comes in. You're not being lazy. You just need to make your life maybe more efficient. So if you can shift your focus a little bit when you start to say things like I say it to myself, you know, you're out of focus. You have ADHD. You know, you're not good enough because of these hardships that you have, because of these mental tendencies that you have. Well, look at it a different way, right? Because there's a much different way where you can look at this and be like, look, I just have some challenges, right? That I need to make a more efficient life structured around me. I need to have more efficiency and more discipline. Whereas some people may be able to accomplish the same thing because they don't have this need for efficiency. This need for efficiency can drive you to greatness. It doesn't have to be your detriment, and it surely doesn't have to be your identity with ADD or ADHD or whatever sort of disability that you want to try to pin on yourself to make excuses for your behaviors. Now, for me, for this podcast, I recognize that it has been getting difficult, right? It's difficult for me I set up 2 cameras. I want to have like studio lighting. So back here, I have all this beautiful lighting. I want everything to be perfect. I even want the message to be perfect, right? And I know it can't be. But I know what I can do. I know the things that I can control for, the things that I really can do is efficiency. That's one of those things that if I'm efficient with it, if I find out how to do it simply, then I'm going to be able to do it more often. And here's what I've learned over the past few months of doing this thing is it helps me greatly. And so I certainly do hope that this does help a number of people out there, but largely this is for myself. It's kind of like my journal almost. Yeah, I still journal a lot, but this helps me because it's a stream of consciousness that I kind of much prefer. So when I stopped doing it, I started to feel like empty. I started to feel like I was missing something that had been turned so good for me. And you know, a big part of that was the relationship that I was going through. It was breaking up at the time, right? So for the past about month, I've been going through a very challenging breakup. And throughout that time, I've been doing and finding myself in a lot of questionable frames of mind, right? I've gone into areas inside of my psyche that otherwise, for the past 6 months, while I was in absolute love with this woman, I didn't really notice, right? They just weren't there. A lot of those unconscious fears of maybe you have a fear of not being enough. Well, when you're with somebody, that same fear that you have of not being enough it gets translated into something else because that other person projects to you and shows you who they believe that you are, right? And it's such a beautiful thing when somebody's love shows you back inside of a mirror of who you really are, right? Relationships can become toxic when they go the other way, when that mirror starts to show the shadow and show the ugly side of the other person, and that happens through an entanglement of resentments and the inability to forgive and see past, right? All of that type of stuff is going to like boil up and fester. But here we are, like going through this, and I begin to see the negative side of myself. And then at that point, I recognize, okay, it's time for me to either realign with this relationship and work on it. So we start trying to work on it, and at some point, it may be too late, right? At some point, those resentments and those things may just be there. They may actually be there for a purpose of guiding us into the next phase of life. And that relationship may be saying, okay, this is done. Like, enjoy the good things that came from it and move on. But anyway, I started to see the negative sides of me a lot. And these negative sides of me were really, really starting to hurt. They were really starting to hurt because they're things that I concentrate on and I work at anyway. But what happens when you're in a relationship with somebody is that your biggest darknesses, right? Your biggest dirties are going to come out of the closet and they're going to shine back at you, and you're going to see them in magnification, right? And if you and your partner aren't aligned in how you work through these types of things, then they can become towards your detriment, right? And so I start to experience these fears of these inadequacies and things like that, and then I start to react, especially as the breakup started to get really real. I started to react. My ways of reacting, are more detrimental to myself, right? I may stop finding the joy in fitness. I did talk about that. I talked about not finding the joy in fitness, how this thing has been weighing so down that it's been hard for me to find my why without having a race. And this challenge, not having a race in front of me, has been really, really wonderful to go through, because when I do have a race, I can kind of just disappear into it. Right. But now I've been having to take the self-volition. I've been having to take the self-volition to actually go and do fitness, even though I don't feel it inside. Right. And so this has been rather tremendous, although I do miss having that race. Right. But I do feel like I'm building some sort of intrinsic reward up inside of me. So that builds confidence in me that I'm headed in some sort of right direction. But as I started to feel these fears, like that I wasn't enough, right, I started to seek other ways. I also hopped onto Tinder, hopped onto even Grindr. I hopped onto Grindr, and I was like, what am I even doing here? What am I even doing here? I was basically just there for the validation, right? Because I would get men who messaged me, oh, you're sexy, oh, your abs, and it made me feel good about myself. And I sat there like getting these text messages, and I recognized that I was just playing with other people on the other end of it. I was just playing with them. I didn't even want to see them, and they're sitting there wanting, and I'm denying. And it just started to make me feel... It made me feel real selfish and real like, what am I doing here? This isn't, I'm not even interested in meeting up with any of these people. And the same thing was happening with Tinder as well. I was starting to connect with these women who I really was more so just trying to see, am I worthy of love after this breakup? Like, I don't know. For some reason, this breakup made me feel like I was not worthy of love again. And that shows me that over the past few months that there were some toxic buildup that was festering inside that relationship. And that shows me that from this relationship, I'm actually going to be able to take a lot of things into my next one to further understand how I operate as a man in a relationship, trying to be loving to a woman, and ways that I can grow and be better as a man to a woman than how as I was before. Now, Some of my listeners may go, "Why has he just completely switched over?" And honestly, I'm just going with the flow. I know that one of the ways that my insecurities also took me, it was to one of the one of the gay bathhouses down in Fort Lauderdale. And so pretty soon after the breakup, I go, well, maybe I'll get over this with just some careless sex. And so I went to the bathhouse, and man, I was, a place where I would, used to have been enthralled by. I used to kind of salivate towards others. I didn't feel that. I didn't feel it whatsoever. I tried to connect with a guy, and I recognize that really, really all I want is to be connected. All I really want is the touch and love of a woman. I mean, it's really all I want. I don't care to even try to explain it much anymore. I do find men beautiful, but when it comes down to getting physical, I think it's just for the ladies these days. But I will probably always still consider myself bisexual. Anyway, so now that's back over there, that is also something that was weighing down on me. It was weighing down on me a little bit in this relationship. Is this really going to be who I am? What's happening here? It was very confusing over the past few months. So, getting into a relationship when you are going through a lot is also another time when the shadows are going to come into your life. They're going to come into your life regardless. If you're going through a lot, then you're going to have a lot of, difficult challenges arise. And if you're in a relationship, then those things are going to be magnified because the other person, when they see them and they feel them, it can hurt them. And then what they do is they project it back, in a sense. And that's kind of how that type of stuff works. And it's just, it's such a bummer. I mean, everything is so, complex. It's, and it's all so super fun to look into because really, none of it actually fucking matters. All of it is really fun to look into because if we're willing to take a dive into this type of stuff and really start to, concentrate and look deep into it, we can actually evolve into stronger, better human beings. We don't have to let our, pains over relationships or our re-traumatization through relationships then cause hate and burden inside of us. We don't have to go in that direction. We can actually take all of them and turn them into little seeds of change into our life. And that's, I got started talking on efficiency, and I want to show that through going through these serious challenges, I recognized not a whole slurry of things about my ex that helps me to get over them, right? Instead, I recognized things about myself that I needed to tweak so that I can go through further challenges in life, right? I recognized that while I was going through this, the challenges, the cognitive emotional challenges that were going on inside of my brain were limiting my ability to do things that were good for me, like this podcast and fitness, journaling, yoga, diet, even was starting to slack, all of those things. And if I could then make them more efficient, I could weather this storm much better. So that's basically the moral of this story here today. I didn't know it when I was going to get started, what the moral of this was. I was just sitting down to talk. But that's where this stuff is good for me. And that's where I'm going to keep on keeping on with this stuff now that I've found this new app called Riverside that my new SEO partner with Halo 42 has opened me up to. So I'm going to give this a try. see how the recordings go and everything. Also, I've got it recorded down here, so I'll be putting that out on all the different podcast channels. And y'all, if you really enjoy what I have to say on these days, if you really enjoy and think that it can help other people, then please hop on to the Patreon site, the Mark A. Turnipseed Patreon site, where I'm looking for additional funding to help keep this machine going that we call Seeds of Change. So let's go out into this world, plant some seeds of change, be better people for it. I love you. You love you. You love your neighbors. We all have love. That's all there is. So let's keep on going with that. Bless you all, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your weekend.